guys, I just want to thank you for your comments, both positive and negative. I am going to go into a lot more detail on the DMT experiences that I've had and the entity that I met. I'm sure if you've used DMT, you've met the same entity. We all seem to encounter it, even if we don't remember it. And I'm going to just go into a lot more granular detail about that, as well as what I think, what might be happening over there in that other world, and how it directly influences everything that's happening here in this one. The DMT and ayahuasca experiences are directly proportional to the type of bark that you're using, as well as the dosage. The experience is multidimensional. It's more than 3 dimensions. And how far you want to go into this crazy DMT world is completely dependent on the dose that you're willing to try. A low dose of DMT is similar to being in an airplane at 39,000 feet. You get a bird's eye view of the landscape, and in the DMT it appears as fractal geometry and complex patterns in a Fibonacci sequence. But as you increase the dose of DMT, you start getting closer and closer to the ground until eventually you are on the ground or even below the ground. And that's where you get a really good close-up look at what this entity is, this crazy world, and you can go even further than that. But first I want to talk about the entity that I encountered, that other people I'm sure have encountered. It goes a little bit beyond these self-transforming machine elves. This is a larger structure that is composed of many smaller structures, which are composed of many smaller structures, and so on and so on. It just seems to go on and on and on and on. But when you are on the ground level with a high dose of DMT, you are face to face with something that can only be described as alien. Really strong dose of DMT, you will go through the tunnel, and if you use a strong enough dose of DMT, you're going to find yourself looking at a large, colorful structure. And I found this picture on the internet, and this looks very similar to how it appears. Now, this whole thing is so big, and you are looking at it from outside of it. And on the surface, it's 3-dimensional. So all of these designs that are on the surface are actually emerging from it. And it's really incredible. When you see this thing, the whole thing is moving and morphing. And each little part of it is faces emerging out of it. Glyphs, like hieroglyphs, symbols, patterns that are all connected. And the way that it morphs is fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. It folds in on itself. It's constantly changing, but there's probably 1 trillion individual pixels of this thing, and each of them are working together to create this incredibly complex mosaic of faces and hieroglyphs and symbols. And every time it morphs into something new, it flashes at me 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Every single time the whole structure will morph into a new collage of thousands of these faces and glyphs. 1, 2, 3, it flashes every single time. And these faces are so bizarre. They're animal faces, alien faces. I don't know, sometimes it's human looking faces. But it is just the most bizarre, crazy thing you can imagine. But when you witness this, you have this sense that you are witnessing something that is not from this world, but that in fact is perhaps creating everything that we see in this world and is everything in this world. You get the sense that this is something that few people have seen in our modern society, and you know that you're in the presence of something incredibly intelligent and powerful. And I think every time it flashes, what it's doing is conveying information to your subconscious. You may not be consciously aware of the information that it's giving you, but you certainly are receiving information. Um, I had one instance where I broke through after 8 hours of smoking DMT. I broke through, and when I broke through, I woke up in this world, this crazy, strange world, and it was as if I was waking up from a dream of being human and having this life on Earth. It didn't quite seem real. This life here didn't seem like it was real, but it seemed like it was a dream I was having. And when I woke up in that world, I woke up as a different entity. I didn't wake up as me. I didn't wake up as Johnny. I woke up as some powerful, incredibly powerful being. And that's when I had memories come back to me. And boom, as soon as that happened, I was back in the tunnel, out of that crazy world and into a machine elf world. I didn't know what to expect my first breakthrough, but I sure wasn't expecting that. I couldn't have ever even imagined that that's what would happen. It was so profound, and the breakthrough gave me a huge amount of information within a fraction of a second. I mean, so much information that that I wasn't even consciously aware of it, and that information started to reveal itself over the next 2 years. This is a set of Mayan and Aztec glyphs of their gods and characters. This is exactly what you see. This thing creates thousands of these glyphs in front of you, and they're constantly changing. But this is identical to what you see. And it looks just like this. It's raised, three-dimensional off the surface, and it emerges off this flat surface to create these faces at you and these symbols, and it is so complex and detailed and huge. It is just absolutely awe-inspiring. It is, you just sit there and stare at it going, holy crap, is this really happening? This is a good example of the kind of objects that emerge out of it. You have a three-dimensional object like a skull, and then that skull has a three-dimensional relief on it. And within that three-dimensional relief, there's additional three-dimensional uh, uh, details, very intricate details that emerge. So you have a larger object like the skull, and then you have all of these incredible faces and glyphs that are in three dimension raising off of it, and within that there's even more detail. It became very clear to me that the Mayans, the Egyptians, they used some serious psychedelics. They did large doses of psychedelics. So they, because you only see this kind of thing when you go really far into that world. Here's another example of a typical face you would see emerge within this structure. It's nothing less than mind-blowing when you see it, because you know that it's a living thing. This is an Aztec ritual artifact, and in some places in the DMT it looks very earthy and clay-like, and you see things like this emerge out of that, like a mound of dirt, a face with eyes, and it could be an alien-looking face or an animal-looking face, and it constantly changes. It is astounding. Here's an Aztec mask that is also extremely DMT, and as you look at art and sculpture in all cultures, you begin to see that everything springs from the use of psychedelics. And even going further into this, it appears that this entity that's creating all these things in the DMT is somehow creating things here using that same self-transforming metamorphosis that we call evolution. This is an interesting piece. It's a Mayan piece of an ancient alien pilot and his spaceship. It looks suspiciously a lot like a mushroom, as do a lot of things in life. But you do see aliens in the DMT. You do see them on high doses. And I swear, I have been on a spaceship multiple times. unbelievable. But that's a whole nother video on its own. But I can see where they saw these things in the psychedelic vision or the psychedelic world, and it translated into their artwork. Also translated into their architecture, into their culture, into religion around the world. Psychedelics played a profound role in the evolution of people on this planet. And it never spoke to me, while the entity never spoke to me in a verbal language, it did speak to me in gibberish. And it also thought to me. I understood the gibberish as English, which is really bizarre. But it did think to me, and it told me that its name is I Am One. It likes to be called I Am. I call it One. This thing would not stop talking in the DMT. And it spoke to me in a gibberish language. For instance, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I understood as only one can know me. Incredibly, after this DMT breakthrough, when I looked at words or letters, I didn't see what they were spelling. I saw a hidden meaning behind it. And it became very clear that everything reflects this entity. People, animals, insects, art, language, religion, culture, absolutely everything reflects this entity. Language appears to be one of the cornerstones of this entity. It's all about communicating. And I recognized these glyphs in the DMT as that it was trying to communicate with me. And I also recognized that it seeded language into people using these visual representations for words. I also recognized that colors and shapes and the arrangement of fractal geometry in the DMT is also communication. It is communicating with you at a subconscious level that you are not aware of, but even the way that the patterns are displayed conveys a wealth of information to you. So these patterns, these sacred geometry patterns, and the shapes and the colors, the way that they are arranged and presented to you in the DMT experience, what it's doing is conveying a ton of information to you. It doesn't look like a language, but in fact it actually is. And I do understand a small part of this language. I don't know why anyone else hasn't deciphered this, but it looks very obvious and apparent to me. And for whatever reason, this thing just wanted to communicate with me. After the experience, I had this new appreciation and awareness, an understanding of things like art and music. It spoke to me, and it never did that before. It was like looking at everything in the world with a brand new set of eyes. It was just amazing. I just couldn't get enough. I was obsessed with looking at art and listening to music and looking at sculpture. I just could not get enough of it because it all looked completely different. years of my life have been full of so much suffering and heartache and pain, that this thing showed me so much love and gave me so much awareness, self-awareness, and a greater awareness of the world and of the nature of our reality. I walked away from this thing feeling so overwhelmed with emotion and joy and so much gratitude. I just so grateful to have been given so many gifts while I was in the DMT. It also gave me a message to bring back. It wants everyone to know that it is there and it is available to anyone who needs it. It actually wants us to come in and visit. And I think that this is actually a part of our ongoing evolution, that in order to propel us forward into the future, that we really need to reconnect with it in order to bring greater self-awareness to ourselves and to each other, and hopefully we can make this world a better place to live. So I have a ton more stuff to share with you, but I'm going to close for now. I just want to say thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your comments. I love you guys. Be good to each other. Be good to each other, because you never know when you might meet yourself somewhere in the world.